A little bit more gas in my tank after that marathon session coverage late last week. I feel like I'm starting to catch up on sleep a little bit. We shall see how the rest of the week goes. But I do want to inform you here with Illinois in Focus Daily, I'm going to be off Friday and all of next week. So just those who join us live each and every weekday morning in the chat room, just keep that in mind. Program notes, I am off Friday and all of next week. I definitely planned that to fall after the end of what I knew was going to be a pretty tough session. So just wanted to get that in front of you. But this is Illinois in Focus Daily, powered by the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop, editor of Illinois at thecentersquare.com. Get headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com, click newsletter, and you'll be able to get headlines from Illinois, from Washington, D.C., and beyond in your inbox each and every weekday morning. But of course, here with Illinois in Focus, we break things down for you. What's going on in the land of Lincoln. Several things we're going to tackle today. We're going to hear the governor react to criticism of him using expletives to tell Donald Trump and Republicans where to go. He was asked about that yesterday. But we also got to delve into some of the final things that happened at the State House late last week on Halloween morning, but also beforehand when you had the Illinois Department of Corrections director finally approved by the Senate. And you've also got the conversation about expanding the state's migrant sanctuary laws, those things happening, of course, late night into the early morning hours at the Illinois General Assembly. But up next, we're going to talk live with Don Tracy, Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. He turned in petitions on Friday. We'll talk with him about some of the current stuff that's going on in Congress and what his thoughts are on the issue. And as well, is Illinois primed to get a Republican statewide candidate like a U.S. senator? So we'll talk about all of that and more here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Again, wake up with us each and every weekday morning for the latest here with the Center Square and Illinois in Focus. A lot of talk of elections today with one high-profile election in New York City. We'll see what happens, and some elections happening across the country in various states. But we don't have elections here in Illinois until March, and that's going to be the primary, setting up the candidates to be on the November ballots. And we're talking now with one of the candidates for U.S. Senate, Don Tracy. He joins us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, editor of the Center Square. Go to thecentersquare.com and get the newsletter in your inbox. Don, thanks for taking time. You turned in your petitions on Friday, and that's always a big deal when it comes to getting on the ballot. So how did you do? How many petitions did you end up turning in?
Almost 10,000. The rule of thumb is to do about double because, on the average, 20% or so, your signatures might not be good because they're duplicates or the people aren't registered or they're, they have moved or for some other reason. So you want a cushion so that if you get challenged, you stay on the ballot. So we turned in about, a little over 9,500. And it's good to have that phase behind us, but I really enjoy that phase of a campaign because, you're going up to individual voters asking for a signature. A lot of times you get good questions, and so you have some good conversations.
Don, obviously some big issues in front of U.S. senators right now, and it seems that they've voted more than a dozen times to keep the government open. It's been closed for more than a month now. It's on track, if not already, to be the longest government shutdown. How would you handle this situation, especially with those pressure points like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program? And I saw that they're starting to release some WIC dollars, but all of this obviously, some important funding that should go out. How would you, if you were in the U.S. Senate, handle this?
Well, I would certainly want to make sure that the American people understand that this is a filibuster shutdown. It's a Schumer Democrat filibuster shutdown. It's an abuse of the filibuster. A majority of both the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House, and of course the White House, do not want the government shut down. And the U.S. Senate would vote to open it, but they're being stopped from voting to keep the government open by a Democrat filibuster. And filibusters are important, and I support the filibuster, but this is an abuse of it. The vote, the resolution is a clean resolution. It's just a resolution that the funding has expired for the government, so let's keep it open at current funding levels. But basically, the Biden budget levels. This same bill was passed out of the Senate without a filibuster last spring. The same sort of thing, perhaps not as clean as this one, was passed, I think, 13 or 14 times under the Biden administration. And the Republicans didn't abuse the filibuster to shut down the government. It's like somebody saying, I'm losing the game, so I'm going to take my marbles and go home. The Democrat, because they want to, they're in the minority now, and they obviously don't like that, and so they're trying to get their way by concocting political leverage, by hurting the entire country with a government shutdown. It's fair and it's abuse of the filibuster, and it needs to stop.
So when it comes to the filibuster, the president has said that they need to nuke that, right, and bring out that option to be able to just get the government open. Is that something that you would support?
I would not support ending the filibuster. The advantage of the filibuster is that it prevents yo-yo government. Without the filibuster, every time there's a change in the Senate, in the House, in the White House, you would have a dramatic change in policy. For example, if you say what some people would think would be a far-right government, and then the Democrats took over, it would switch to what some would say would be a far-left government, and we'd go back and forth like that. So for the long-term stability of the country, we need the filibuster. The passions run hot in the House. The Senate is supposed to be a deliberative body where there is some compromise. Big stuff requires bipartisan cooperation, and the Senate is the place that happens because of the filibuster. So I would really hate to see the filibuster eliminated. If it is, then the next time the Democrats are in control, they'll probably make Puerto Rico the 51st state and Washington, D.C. the 52nd state. And those would, be, Democrat, 4 more Democrat senators. They would eliminate voter ID throughout the country. They would pack the Supreme Court. So it's really an important tool for the long-term stability of the American government. So I do like the filibuster.
It's being reported
but this is an abuse. This is an abuse of the filibuster, though, by the Democrats.
And the Democrats holding out reportedly because they want to, as Republicans are saying, have taxpayer subsidies for non-citizen health care. Illinois has been doing that for years, starting with seniors, and then they had the adults program. The governor recognizing that the cost overruns were too great, and there was some questionable accounting in the program, so he ended the one for the adults. But the senior program still going on with Illinois tax dollars funding that. Where should we go with this idea of what the Democrats reportedly are pushing to not just the non-citizen healthcare aspect, but also when it comes to healthcare in general, and how to address Obamacare? Can you address those issues?
One of the reasons why I'm running for U.S. Senate is to reduce the cost of living for all Illinoisans, especially working families. And healthcare is one of the drivers of the cost of living increases. I think healthcare, I read the other day, is increasing at a rate of 2 or 3 times inflation, which I think would be around 8 or 9% a year. Healthcare costs in the United States are approaching 20% of GNP, which is unsustainable. So we've got to do a lot of work there. But this is no way to do it by shutting the government down. The government, if we're going to be taking on really hard projects like making healthcare more affordable, and continuing high quality healthcare, that needs to be done on a bipartisan basis, and it needs to be done with an operating government, not a shutdown. So this is the wrong way to approach government. It's playing political games for leverage. They've admitted that. And, these are serious issues that need to be dealt with in a serious way, not by, say, taking, the marbles home and shutting the government down just because you can't get your way and because you're not in the majority, which is what the Democrats are doing.
We're talking with Don Tracy. He's a candidate for U.S. Senate on the Republican ticket. March primary is March 17th, and of course, the general election is in November. Don, we've got obviously the issue of immigration enforcement and public safety pending in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. The emergency motion the Trump administration has to reverse a lower court's decision to block the use of the National Guard for public safety. But the state of Illinois is a migrant sanctuary state. We've got legislation we're going to touch on in the next segments that they approved in the final hours early Halloween to essentially expand the state's migrant sanctuary policies by requiring hospitals, daycares, and universities to have policies and protocols for dealing when law enforcement come on to enforce things, but also concerns about law enforcement facing civil lawsuits. So how do you, as a U.S. Senator, get Illinois to fall in line with what Republicans say is the need for immigration enforcement?
It just seems like if there's a way to do something wrong, the Illinois Democrat leaders find a way to do it. They were soft on crime before. They said we're going to defund police. And so Chicago was down, I think, 2,000 police officers. They don't believe in arresting, I guess, clearing the streets of the worst of the worst. So the governor and the mayor are encouraging protesters to resist arrest and resist federal law enforcement and even assault federal law enforcement officers. I mean, it's just insane. And then and of course, then they have the sanctuary city policies and government benefits, Illinois benefits for illegal aliens that have attracted a lot of the illegal immigration that we've experienced in Chicago in particular. We have to remember how we got here. We got here because of the Biden Democrat open border policy that brought in an additional 10 or 20 million to $20 million illegal aliens. And I don't know what has happened to this country. It wasn't that long ago that President Obama was being called the deporter in chief. He deported, I think, over 3 million in his first term, more than I believe Trump deported in his first term. And you had people like Schumer and Biden and many other Democrat leaders saying, yeah, we have to have a secure border, and border enforcement is important. You can't have a real country without borders. But how things have changed. What has changed? Is it about voting, non-citizen voting? And it just seems like more and more, that sort of issue creeps up there. And there have been efforts like in New York and San Francisco and other places to allow non-citizens to vote. So maybe that's it. I don't know, but it just doesn't make sense. And compare Chicago with Memphis. Memphis is also down on police officers, like 600. Memphis is also a murder capital. In fact, it's the U.S. murder capital per capita, whereas Chicago is the U.S. murder capital in totality and total numbers of murders. 2 or 3 times New York, I think 5 times L.A. murders overall. And I know Memphis. I lived in Memphis most of the 70s in law school and I'm practicing law down there. Well, unlike Chicago's approach, Memphis has cooperated with federal law enforcement, and so they're taking advantage of federal law enforcement resources to make Memphis a safer city. They've arrested, I think, 1,500 mostly gang members. They have picked up a lot of illegal firearms. They have also found over 80 missing children. People forget that during the Biden open borders, there were thousands of unaccompanied minors that came across the border. And a lot of those kids are still missing in who knows what situations. So why, I don't know why Pritzker in particular is afraid to negotiate with the U.S. president about making Chicago a safer city. If he's afraid to negotiate with an American president, then why is he running for president? Because he'll have to negotiate with Putin and Hamas and Xi and other people like that. But if he can't negotiate with the U.S. president, how on earth is he possibly going to have to? Is he going to be able to negotiate with world leaders with large armies?
Don Tracy with us here. He's running for U.S. Senate to take the seat that Democratic U.S. Senator Dick Durbin is vacating. And I want to talk about the politics here in a moment. But another big issue facing the country right now is a decision on how the president can use tariffs in trade with other countries. The president says that he needs the flexibility to be nimble to do these types of deals. But you've got people pushing back saying that he can't have unilateral authority on this. What are your thoughts?
Well, the Supreme Court is going to make that decision and decide to what extent the president has tariff authority. When World War II ended, the U.S. was the last country standing. Europe was in ruin, so was Japan and China and other places around the world. And so we made a decision then, the right decision, to start subsidizing world trade through the Marshall Plan and otherwise. And we've done it for almost 80 years now. But that's at some point we should have stopped because we don't need to subsidize our main economic competitor, China, anymore. We don't even need to subsidize Europe. So I think what the president is trying to do is reset world trade policy in a way that is more of a level playing field and more fair to the U.S. And so and he's using tariffs to do that. Now, whether that's the right approach, I don't know, but I do like the fact that he is trying to reset world trade policy to create more of a level playing field and bring jobs back to the United States. And I've talked to some manufacturers who really like it as well, that believe that tariffs are helping them. I talked to one who actually has got a job from a American manufacturer that was having part of the product made and assembled in China, and that's been reshored to the United States. And this same manufacturer has an opportunity to bid on a couple other bigger projects to bring those projects, that manufacturing back from China to the United States. And I visited with the head of a coalition of, I think, 1,500 manufacturers who have been advocating for the use of tariffs to make American manufacturing more competitive again. And so they're all in on that. So I'm not an expert in that field. Like I said, I think the jury's still out on whether that's going to work. But in the meantime, tariff revenues have helped our deficit. And I think we'll, give it a year and we'll find out if that works. And of course, we're going to find out before that whether the president's use of tariffs as a trade tool is within his legal authority.
Finally here, let's talk a little bit about the politics. Obviously, gerrymandering dominated the conversation over the summer, but Don, the U.S. Senate seats across the country are not gerrymanderable, I guess, if that's even a word, because you get two senators from each state and they represent the entire state. That gives Illinois voters the opportunity to elect a statewide Republican again. I think Mark Kirk was the last statewide Republican U.S. senator. It's been years. Do you think Illinoisans are ready for another Republican U.S. senator?
Well, I do. I think this is our best opportunity since Mark Kirk beat Giannoulis in 2010. I was running statewide myself then for lieutenant governor, and was at a lot of events with Senator Kirk. With Dick Durbin retiring, this is an open seat opportunity. It's one of our best opportunities since 2010 to win a U.S. Senate seat in Illinois. The opponents on the Democrat side are are individuals who have not run statewide before on their own. Stratton rode on Pritzker's coattails. The other two have never run statewide. They're not that well known. None of the three of them are well known statewide. So it's an open seat against relatively inexperienced candidates, and you have a state party and a national party that is running harder and harder left. Some would say socialistic. I think some of them admit they're socialists. They seem to be following AOC and Mondami in New York and Bernie down the socialist or Marxist approach to government. And that, I think as they continue to go harder and harder left and advocate for boys playing in girls' sports, I think that opens up the middle for the right Republican to win statewide in Illinois. And I happen to think I am that person because I've got statewide experience, both running statewide in 2010 and also being chair of the Illinois Republican Party for 3.5 years, which of course is a statewide position.
Don Tracy, again, thank you so much for taking time with us. It's not going to be the last time we talk, obviously, heading into the primary March 17th, but into the November general election as well. There's going to be plenty happening between now and then, I'm sure. So we'll definitely connect again in the near future, all right?
Sounds great. Look forward to being back on, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and your listeners.
Appreciate that. It is Illinois in Focus daily, each and every weekday morning here. Wake up with us, and we'll go live. You can get the breakdown at thecentersquare.com in your inbox each and every weekday morning here with The Center Square.
Mr. Speaker, do you agree with Governor Pritzker that you want federal law enforcement to work with local law enforcement to get rid of criminal illegal aliens?
Let me begin by answering that question with telling you I don't believe anyone is an illegal alien. That's a terrible term to use about anyone.
It's a legal term.
It's not a legal term. They used to call black people slaves legally, and it was wrong. Let's stop dehumanizing people. Let's start treating people right.
That's just some of the floor debates on Halloween morning after a marathon session. They went even longer than that to pass more legislation at the Illinois General Assembly. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, the editor of The Center Square. You can go to the website and get the latest in the newsletter each and every weekday morning, but you can wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Lot to unpack still from the final few hours of legislative session on October 30th, and it spilled over into the morning of October 31st with the U.S., or the Illinois Senate. I'm personally still recovering from covering all of that. So the Illinois Senate, they had their final vote at about 4:30ish and some parliamentary stuff, and then they got out of there a little after that. But it was 4:30 in the morning before I got out of the Capitol building in Springfield. So some of the things they passed, obviously we've talked about the transit bailouts and the tax increase that could happen with RTA and the sweeping of the road fund interests to pay for RTA. You had the decoupling bill that also passed to decouple the state's tax code from the federal tax code. You have the energy issues that were brought up and the concerns that they're now tacking on $8 billion of cost to the ratepayer to help prop up battery storage for the renewable energy push that Illinois is undertaking by law. But you also had the expansion of the state's migrant sanctuary policies. And this is a bill that Speaker Chris Welch brought forward to essentially, in a way, require certain places to have policies dealing with law enforcement. Here's how the speaker characterized the bill he proposed.
Everyone should feel safe. Not some people. All people should feel safe at our hospitals, which will be required to adopt safeguards concerning law enforcement's presence at healthcare facilities, at courthouses, where those ordered to appear in court for jury duty, a traffic ticket, or other businesses will be protected from extrajudicial abuse and detention. And on our college campuses and daycare centers, which will now adopt policies to protect students and children in their care, including protection against disclosing a family's real or perceived immigration status. In this bill, we're also creating a private right of action to enforce these protections. We're adding teeth to this bill with that private right of action.
Now, when you hear private right of action, that means civil litigation. Somebody, an individual, private individual can go and sue, say, the university for violating this law, or the daycare center for violating this law, or a law enforcement officer for violating this law. Questions about qualified immunity being brought up. Republican State Representative Patrick Windhorst questioning Welch on this issue.
Our Bivens action is not limited to federal officers. It is limited to, there is no limitation. It applies to any person. So we look at what Bivens does under federal law, and apparently we think that's a good idea to bring it to state law, but we don't put in the same protections that exist with Bivens suits. What will be the consequences by not following that practice? The answer is we don't know. What individuals are going to be subject to civil liability that today we're not even thinking they would be subject to that liability? What violations of constitutional law that we may not even be thinking about today will individuals be subjected to liability for violating? This is too broad and it goes too far. We are attempting through this bill to place restrictions on federal law enforcement officers. We have also placed our state and local law enforcement officers in jeopardy of civil liability. Under our United States Constitution, the federal government is supreme. The ability for us as a state to impose civil liability on federal officers is highly dubious. So when a federal court decides that that portion of this act is unconstitutional, the only people we'll have been exposing to civil liability will be our local and state law enforcement officers, completely defeating what was described as a purpose of this bill. This bill goes too far, it is too broad, and there will be grave consequences to our state if it is.
And ultimately, it does pass. But you can see there, that was from October 31st. And a little bit later on, it was October 31st. No, that was October 30th.
Exposing.
As you can see from the timestamp there. But during John Cabello's comments, it changed over to Halloween.
We have good people in law enforcement that dedicate their lives to the service of others. They're your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, and your friends. They are white, black, Hispanic, and every other race. They took an oath. The oath is to support the Constitution of the United States of America, first.
The time change coming up.
The state of Illinois, second. And when it comes to it, it's the first part of that oath that takes over.
There's the strike of midnight. So obviously you can see there, they just keep going. They went for another 2 hours in the House discussing not just this legislation, but other bills. But on this bill to require certain places to have policies in place, Democratic State Representative Lillian Jimenez from Chicago addressed why she thinks this is important.
As daycare centers to adopt policies to ensure families are not excluded or discouraged from participating in daycare programs based on their actual or perceived immigration status. We want daycare centers to establish a written plan of action, establish procedures for seeking consent from parents before releasing a child's information, and making sure to formalize late pickup protocols, ensuring children are safely released to designated adults. This bill will not put any additional financial burden on any of these child care providers. This legislation, what it does is give centers clear procedures and protection for children in emergencies.
And Jimenez talked about a couple of emergencies she has experienced herself and some of her colleagues have experienced, and having daycare centers on lockdown because of ICE enforcement on the streets and a variety of other things like tear gas being deployed and such. So the rationale the Democrats pushing to have this become law is just that. They don't like the chaos they see on the streets, but when it comes to that chaos, some people saying it's because there are illegal immigrants in Illinois, and Illinois law prohibits state and local law enforcement from cooperating with federal law enforcement for immigration purposes. Here is C.D. Davidsmeyer, Republican from Murraysville, questioning the speaker on the House floor on Halloween morning.
Mr. Speaker, do you agree with Governor Pritzker that you want federal law enforcement to work with local law enforcement to get rid of criminal illegal aliens?
Let me begin by answering that question with telling you I don't believe anyone is an illegal alien. That's a terrible term to use about anyone.
It's a legal term.
It's not a legal term. They used to call black people slaves legally, and it was wrong. Let's stop dehumanizing people. Let's start treating people right. Language matters. Let's treat people with respect and humanity. And I agree with Governor Pritzker that we should fight like hell to protect people's constitutional rights and their due process rights. Next question.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe or do you agree with Governor Pritzker that local law enforcement should work with federal law enforcement on immigration issues?
I believe, as the original sponsor of the Trust Act in 2017, which was passed by this august body and signed by a Republican governor, that law enforcement should follow the Trust Act.
Other nations have chosen to send some of the worst of the worst. I am not saying that everyone who has come here illegally is a bad person. I don't believe that. But we have laws and we have process. And if anybody should believe in following the laws that are passed by a governmental body, it should be the very people that are right here.
But a bill that ultimately passed the House and also the Senate. It's on its way to the governor's desk. The governor making these comments yesterday saying that they're all looking for how to rein ICE in.
We're all looking for ways to rein in ICE because they're clearly overstepping the bounds of their authority. I think we all understand that. You can see that. Just stand on a street corner and watch them operate. They come in, they aren't following even what the courts are telling them to do. So the question is, how can we rein them in? And there are, as you know, limits because, well, the federal government trumps state law and they have federal, well, limited immunity, but immunity in the conduct of their job. And so we have relied, by the way, for, well, 100 years or more at least, on the federal government to rein in its own agents, to have supervisors and department heads and the President of the United States suspend people who are breaking the rules or hold them accountable in some way or even fire them. So we expect that normally from the federal government, but this is not a normal moment. And these are not normal times. And we now have a president who doesn't follow the law and who himself is a convicted felon.
So we'll see just where this all lands. Of course, wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily. guys, that's all I got for you today. We'll have to unpack the prison director debate tomorrow, but I did want to revisit this from yesterday. Of course, we shared Republican gubernatorial candidate Ted Dabrowski's criticism of Governor J.B. Pritzker, telling the Illinois Teachers Federation of Teachers at a recent conference this.
They want to criminalize educators for supporting LGBTQ students. They want to turn classrooms into cultural war battlegrounds. And I'm sorry to be vulgar, but Donald Trump and his cronies can all the way off.
So again, the governor making those comments, standing ovation from the teachers union there. The governor was asked about this yesterday in an unrelated event in Glen Ellen, and here's the question and the answer.
Why is it appropriate to say, Trump, get the F out of here?
It was a feeling I had in that moment, and frankly, I think all the limits are off with Donald Trump as president in terms of what our reactions are to what he has to say. He uses that word. It's in that moment, Marianne, in that moment, I really was feeling like all of the students in our public schools are being abused by this administration. And it upsets me greatly, and that was a word that came to mind to describe it.
So the governor using expletives, saying, hey, Donald Trump uses expletives. So I imagine that we're just going to hear that type of thing heat up even more. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Thanks for joining us this morning. Again, the title live, including the prisoner or the prison's director being confirmed, but we'll have to get to that tomorrow. Also tomorrow, we'll bring on somebody from the Center Square's investigative team to talk about some of their latest work here in Illinois and so much more. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Thanks for being here. And again, reminder, program note, I'm off Friday and all of next week. But we're still going to be busy there at thecentersquare.com. So get the newsletter and more with the Center Square. It is Illinois in Focus Daily.